You are being trained to lose, and you do it willingly. You think the game is fair because everyone told you work hard, be patient, and the market rewards effort, but the market rewards control, and control has always been the real curriculum. In this video, you are going to learn why billionaires keep reading the same old war manual, why the smartest people don't pick fights they can't win, and how this thinking maps directly onto your mortgage, your job, your inflation-proof savings, and your retirement timeline that keeps slipping farther away. This is not financial advice, it is financial education, and if that already makes you defensive, good. That defense is the first sign you understand the stakes. In 2026, the world is running a new kind of competition. Artificial intelligence is removing middle-class jobs faster than any future of work speech could admit. Housing prices in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia have detached from wages so permanently that a generation is now locked into renting, and inflation may cool on paper, while your real purchasing power still limps behind 2019 like an injured animal you keep pretending is fine. Meanwhile, the stock market keeps rising, debt keeps ballooning, and wealth keeps concentrating at the top 1%. That disconnect is not random, it is arithmetic. What you will get here is a ruthless translation of Sun Tzu's ideas into modern money, not the cartoon version where everyone imagines bravery and honor and charging forward. The real version is colder. It is about avoiding fights you cannot afford, about winning before you ever swing, about understanding leverage, and about the kind of humiliation most people are too proud to practice. And the most uncomfortable part is this: the richest people rarely need to beat you directly. They just need to structure the rules so you beat yourself. Let's start with a question that should bother you. Why do so many people still repeat the same financial myths even after the evidence has stacked up for decades? Buy and hold, diversify, save 10%, learn to code. In 2020, the advice was to learn technology skills because that would supposedly protect you from automation. In 2026, AI systems write code, test code, refactor code, and generate entire prototypes faster than most entry-level developers can even understand what they're looking at. The skill itself isn't useless, but the promise attached to it was a lie that served someone else. Because if you believe you can upskill your way out of a rigged system, you don't ask who built the rig, and you don't notice you are being moved to the exit one employee at a time. Now here is where it gets ugly. The dark truth is not that competition exists. Competition exists everywhere. The dark truth is that most people are competing with the wrong target and at the wrong time with the wrong resources. They fight emotional battles they cannot win, like trying to prove they are right in a workplace conflict, or taking on student debt for a degree that AI can replace in parts within months, or assuming the landlord will stop raising rent because that feels unfair. Unfairness is not an exception to the system. Unfairness is the system. The rules are designed for winners who can wait, who can negotiate, who can survive longer than you can, and who have access to capital that reacts to their needs. The famous book everyone romanticizes, The Art of War, is actually the wrong label for most modern readers. People hear art and war, and they imagine a manual for battle. But the core lesson is about timing and leverage. It is about humility when humility is strategically correct. It is about knowing when to bow your head so you don't get your head removed from your body. And that maps eerily well onto the financial world you live inside. Because in 2026, the real fights are not trench fights. They are legal fights, regulatory fights, hiring fights, and market structure fights. And you are not playing against people like you. You are playing against institutions that can run negative cash flow longer than you can stay alive. You are playing against companies that can borrow at rates you will never see, because they have collateral, they have credit lines, and they have balance sheets built like fortresses. You are playing against pension funds and sovereign wealth funds with time horizons that last longer than your comfortable life. So let's apply the ideas properly. Sun Tzu's framework is not poetry, it is planning, and he begins by telling you not to rush into battle. Before anyone swings a sword, you calculate whether you can win. That means you stop treating every conflict like a heroic moment. You stop assuming your effort equals your outcome. You stop thinking the world owes you fairness because you are tired of unfairness. Imagine a woman named Maria in Los Angeles. She works as a coordinator at a healthcare firm. She is not lazy, she is not stupid, she is not some caricature. She is just doing her job the way she learned to do it. Then in 2026, her company deploys AI workflow tools. The tools don't eliminate everything at once. They eliminate the boring parts first. Document routing, scheduling, basic customer triage, status updates. Maria's work doesn't disappear in one day. It shrinks quietly. One task becomes an automated template. Two tasks become an AI-generated draft that someone else finalizes. Then the final surprise arrives. Her role is merged into a digital operations team. Her manager says with a calm voice that Maria should apply for an internal posting. The internal posting requires three things Maria has never needed before: AI systems familiarity, data validation discipline, and a new kind of reporting cadence. Maria applies anyway. She gets rejected. Then she gets one more message. If she stays, her responsibilities will continue shrinking and her performance expectations will rise. She feels angry, she wants to fight, she thinks the fight is moral. In her mind, she deserves respect for years of service. But the actual fight is economic. If she files a complaint or legal action, she is entering a battle with costs she cannot afford. And Sun Tzu would say that is exactly the kind of reckless battle the war manual is trying to prevent. Here is the mechanism nobody wants to say out loud. Legal outcomes often depend on resources, not only on truth. A $20,000 to $30,000 claim can become $100,000 once lawyers, expert witnesses, discovery delays, and time add up. The company knows this. They don't need to beat your argument. They only need to outlast your wallet. In 2026, this is even more pronounced because litigation strategies are built to delay while the other side bleeds. You might think the law is a shield for workers. Sometimes it is. But sometimes it is simply a maze where the exits are guarded by time and money. And now you are seeing why the don't fight theme matters. It is not cowardice. It is calculation. It is refusing to spend your last remaining strength on a conflict that cannot return your losses. But we are not done. Because in modern finance, avoiding a battle is not the same as withdrawing from life. Avoiding the wrong fight is what allows you to choose the right fight. Sun Tzu is essentially telling you to shift your focus from winning arguments to winning outcomes. This is the next level, and this is where the script usually loses people. They want the motivational part, they want the be confident part. But the truth is brutal. Most people are not defeated by their weaknesses. They are defeated by their timing. Let me give you a modern example that sounds like a business story, but it is really a survival story. Imagine you own a small real estate development company. You want to build homes, but you don't have the cash to buy land and carry construction costs while waiting for sales. A traditional entrepreneur thinks like this: secure land, build the house, then sell at the market price. They think the market will be there when they are ready. They think time is neutral. They think patience is always rewarded. In Sun Tzu terms, that is initiating the battle after you already see you are under-resourced. But a smarter operator does something different. They win before construction. They start selling before building. They take deposits when the project is only drawings and permits. They offer a discount to buyers because buyers are helping fund the project timeline. A buyer pays $800,000 instead of $1 million because the property is not yet built, but the buyer believes in the plan. And you, the developer, take that cash and use it to buy the land and begin construction without draining your own capital. Your profit is not only in the final resale, your profit is in the financing structure. This is not magic, this is leverage. It is converting other people's risk tolerance into your operational runway. And the buyers, if they are rational, understand what they are doing. They pay less because they accept uncertainty. They still want the upside because housing prices are high and supplies are constrained. So the deal works, but only because the developer planned the fight carefully. Now pattern interrupt. Think about your own life. How often have you been taught to fund everything yourself, then hope the outcome comes later? Saving for a down payment, paying for tuition, waiting years for wages to catch up with inflation, grinding through a job you hate because you were told the payoff arrives after 10 years. You were trained to fund the battle yourself and then pray the market smiles. Meanwhile, the wealthy treat funding as a weapon. They don't wait for the perfect time to act. They manufacture perfect time by controlling who bears the uncertainty. In 2026, the same principle shows up in ways that are less romantic than real estate. It shows up when a company uses public money, tax incentives, and favorable financing to build an advantage, while you get a mortgage rate that rises with the Fed and tight credit conditions. It shows up when the stock market hits new highs while wages stagnate, because the gains are concentrated in assets you do not own. It shows up when your rent resets higher and your salary negotiates lower. And yes, it shows up in job markets shaped by AI. When AI automates tasks, the employer doesn't just remove costs, they also remove bargaining power. Your fight becomes negotiating against systems that can replace you with software and contractors. You can argue for fairness, but fairness is irrelevant to the spreadsheet. Sun Tzu would tell you, stop spending energy trying to win a debate against a mechanism designed to keep you vulnerable. So we move to the second core idea: calculate the cost of the fight before you start, and be honest about what you can afford to lose. Sun Tzu's point is not be nice, it is be rational. If the cost is too high, don't engage. Most people already know this concept in theory, they just refuse to to apply it to real life because applying it would force them to admit that their assumptions are wrong. Here is where your anger is supposed to land. You have been furious about inflation. You have heard that the Fed did its job when headline inflation cooled, but real life didn't get cheaper. Your groceries might move down slightly, but your housing is still brutal. Energy can jump. Insurance is collapsing in many regions because climate-driven loss is turning premiums into a second mortgage. Migration and disaster recovery costs shift onto everyday households. That is the hidden cost curve you are paying while being told to relax. And the cost of the fight shows up in your finances as delayed safety. You might have savings, but it is not enough to cushion job loss. You might have retirement accounts, but you cannot access them without penalties. And in a recession, the market may fall right when your need rises. You might have a health emergency that turns into debt because your insurance covers less than you assumed. That is why people feel trapped. The real battle cost is compounding, and you don't see it as a single number. You feel it as stress. Let's make this concrete with a punchy comparison. In many countries, the top 1% owns a larger share of wealth than at any point in recent history. That means their wealth portfolio can respond to market rebounds. They can borrow against assets even while the economy feels bad because their interest rates and credit access are better than yours. You, on the other hand, can be forced to sell assets at the wrong time, or to take on debt at the worst time. Now ask yourself, when you argue online about whether stocks are overvalued, are you doing something that improves your survival odds, or are you just spending emotional capital? Sun Tzu would call that fighting for ego, not fighting for outcomes. The third core idea is even more uncomfortable. If you can't avoid the conflict, you need strategies that reduce the direct battle. Sun Tzu calls this winning without fighting, and modern life has 1,000 examples of this idea hiding in plain sight. Consider negotiation at work. A typical employee tries to win by pushing harder, complaining louder, or threatening to quit. Sometimes that works. Often it doesn't. The employer's position is not determined by your feelings. It is determined by budgets, headcount plans, and replacement costs. Winning without fighting looks different. It looks like you aligning your value with the organization's pain point. It looks like you offering a solution that lowers their risk. It looks like you negotiating terms that reduce your personal vulnerability. But most people don't do that because they want dignity on day one. They want a correction now. They want immediate justice. In a system designed around delay and cost, immediate justice is often a trap. And now you are ready for the darkest twist. The war manual is not only about external battles, it is also about internal battles, the ones people conduct in their minds. The strongest strategy in any financial system is keeping your opponent calm, confused, and moving in the direction you want them to go. This is where we talk about the humiliation part. Sun Tzu's logic includes the concept of appearing weaker or accepting certain losses so you can survive long enough for the opponent to make a mistake. In old stories, it is called pretending to be humble, pretending to be incompetent, letting the enemy believe you are not a threat. In modern terms, it can look like being flexible publicly while building power privately. It can look like saying yes in meetings when silence would draw attention. It can look like choosing patience when your opponent wants you to react, and pattern interrupt again, because this is where people break. The culture you grew up in rewards loud confidence. It rewards arguing. It rewards proving yourself. That culture is not designed to protect you from financial ruin. It is designed to keep you emotionally reactive. Reactive people make decisions quickly. Quick decisions are where the market usually extracts a price. In 2026, this shows up in consumer finance. People rush into credit card debt because they want relief now. They chase passive income promises because they want escape now. They buy into crypto dreams because they want freedom now. Then they learn the truth. Regulation consolidated power. Institutional players bought more crypto than retail investors. Exchanges became the infrastructure choke points. The promised decentralization turned into a pipeline where the biggest players have the best custody, the best liquidity, and the best legal protection. But you cannot save yourself from that kind of trap by being smarter about assets alone. You have to be smarter about timing and resource management. You have to stop believing that you can gamble and still win in the end. Most people do not lose because of ignorance. They lose because of impatience. Let me return to a micro story, because the numbers are cold and you need something human. Picture a 34-year-old nurse named David in Chicago. He watches financial videos at night. He sees creators talk about passive income like it is a switch you flip. He is exhausted from overtime and understaffing. He is tired of the landlord raising the rent. He is worried because his retirement plan is underfunded, and he has no idea whether Social Security will even be there in the form promised, because the retirement age keeps getting pushed back and the funding gap keeps widening. He wants out. So David chooses a strategy that sounds calm on paper. He sets up an automated investing plan. Then an emergency happens. He gets hit with an unexpected medical bill and needs cash within weeks. The automated plan is not a magic shield. The market is volatile. He sells at a loss to solve the emergency. His timeline breaks. This is not because David is incompetent. It is because he was trained to treat long-term investing as long-term stability. But long-term investing assumes you have short-term stability. Without an emergency buffer, the investment plan becomes a forced liquidation machine. Sun Tzu's lesson here would be, you don't just plan for the battle you want, you plan for the battle your enemy is likely to inflict. If your enemy is life, your enemy is always unpredictable. Climate disasters, job loss from AI automation, insurance premium jumps, medical costs, family caregiving obligations. The enemy never stops. So in 2026, the passive income narrative is dangerous propaganda when it ignores the real cost of survival. A sliver of empowerment comes only when you accept a harsh truth. You do not need fantasies. You need systems that keep you alive under pressure. Now we build the framework properly, and this is where the war manual becomes modern business analytics. Sun Tzu speaks about evaluating 5 forces: moral purpose, timing, terrain, leadership, and laws and rules. The names change, but the logic stays. Moral purpose is not just ideology, it is alignment. In finance, moral purpose is what determines whether you can attract people and maintain commitment. If your plan is just greed with no mission, your team fractures when the pressure rises. If your business has customers that feel like you genuinely understand them, you keep momentum when competitors retreat. Timing is the next factor. This is where most people fail because they think timing is luck. It is not luck if you track it. In the late era of internet disruption, companies that talked about the future often attracted capital because they were already positioned with a narrative that matched the market's direction. In 2026, the timing question is about AI adoption curves, regulation shifts, and consumer behavior changes. For example, if you build a business that depends on a stable advertising market that collapses under economic stress, you are fighting on terrain that is moving. You need to ride trends, not pretend trends will stop to accommodate your plan. Terrain is your advantage based on your unique skills and access. If you are an expert at something narrow, you can use that skill repeatedly for leverage. If you try to jump to a domain where your skill is irrelevant, you lose. People do this when they get ambitious without respect for their constraints. They pick markets they don't understand because they saw someone else win. That is not vision. That is copying, and copying is usually done by those without a real strategy. Leadership determines whether you can recruit supporters when times are hard. You can be technically smart, but if nobody wants to follow you, you have no momentum. In financial terms, leadership is the ability to keep a coalition together. That includes how you communicate, how you compensate, how you handle uncertainty, and whether you can maintain trust when your project is not immediately paying. Rules and law is the last piece, and this is where the dark truth gets sharp. Rules are not neutral. Rules are mechanisms that distribute costs and benefits. In the United States and Europe, we see it in tax systems, in credit scoring, in bankruptcy procedures, in regulatory compliance burdens. In corporate worlds, it is also about internal policy. Who gets paid first? Who gets cut first? Who gets blamed when outcomes miss targets? The laws are not written in stone. They are enforced with human discretion and operational risk calculations. And now the War Manual gives you a strategic warning that matters in 2026 more than ever. If you cannot win, do not attack. If you attack and lose, the consequences are not always a clean defeat. Sometimes they are career termination. Sometimes they are bankruptcy. Sometimes they are asset liquidation at the worst time. Sometimes they are a forced withdrawal from the very market that could recover. The enemy doesn't need to kill you. It just needs to make you disappear from the game. This is why Warren Buffett's most famous discipline can be interpreted as war strategy. He emphasizes not losing money and not forgetting the first rule. You could interpret that as risk management, but in Sun Tzu terms it is defense. A fortress survives attacks. A fortress is not impressive the way a sword fight is impressive. It is just more effective. In a world where inflation can eat savings and AI can remove your job, survival is winning long enough to recover. So what does that mean you should do, practically, without turning this into buy this stock nonsense? It means you treat your life like a portfolio and a war plan at the same time. You build your defenses first. You keep enough liquidity to survive a surprise. You reduce decisions that force you into fixed costs you cannot adjust. You negotiate for stability at work, because stability buys you time for optionality. Optionality is power. Time is power. Now, I need you to understand something else. The richest people don't only survive, they also exploit the mistakes of others. And Sun Tzu's version of this is the wait for the enemy to make a mistake principle. In old Japan stories, leaders outlasted opponents by pretending to be weaker, waiting for internal errors, waiting for arrogance, waiting for the moment when the opponent exhausted their coalition. That is not romance. That is patience as an asset. In modern terms, wait for the market to do what it always does under stress. Credit tightens, companies downsize, insurance costs jump, consumers retrench, rent raises reset, AI